law degree at Loyola Law School. He joined the Orange County District Attorney's Office in 1997 and 22 years. He's a longtime prosecutor with the gang unit. He has prosecuted several gang homicides, and he's conducted over 70 felony jury trials. And that's Mr. Paul Christianos. Our next panelist is Attorney Carolyn Hahn. She's a Deputy Federal Public Defender for the Central District of California, currently stationed in the Riverside office. She has been an attorney for 15 years, devoting her career to criminal defense work for both adults and juveniles. She's a Deputy Defender in Orange County for 7 years and went into private practice for 7 years after that. She's active in the Asian American legal community in Orange County and was the past president of the OT Korean American Bar Association. She's also a board member of the Child Guidance Center, a nonprofit organization that helps families, children, and veterans in Orange County. That's Attorney Carolyn Hahn. Next is Attorney Darren Thompson. He's the Assistant Supervisor of the Orange County Public Defender's Office. He currently supervises attorneys in the Juvenile Delinquency Unit. He started clerking in the office while at law school and was hired after graduation. He has been with the office for over 20 years. He worked on cases involving juvenile dependency as well as serious felonies. He was promoted to Assistant Supervisor in 2016. That is Public Defender Darren Thompson. Next panelist is Attorney Kimberly LaSalle. She's a private defense attorney in Los Angeles. She served vulnerable populations for over 2 decades in Los Angeles and San Diego County Public Defender's Office, also as the Los Angeles Deputy District Attorney, and is currently working as a youth advocate with Independent Juvenile Defender Office in Los Angeles County. She's experienced trial advocate who has worked to obtain justice in most serious matters, including numerous homicide and special circumstances cases. On August 16, 2017, the U.S. Supreme Court granted a review in a case Ms. LaSalle litigated against the Los Angeles Probation Department on behalf of her juvenile client. She is dedicated to monitoring individuals traditionally underrepresented in the legal profession, and her passion is teaching warrior yoga and mindfulness in San Juan, Castrano. That is Attorney Kimberly LaSalle. Next panelist is Attorney Scott Sanders from the Orange County Public Defender's Office. He attended the University of Wisconsin, went to Emory University School of Law. He's been in the Orange County Public Defender's Office for 27 years in county. He has handled a wide range of cases from misdemeanors to death penalty cases. He was the public defender that while he was defending defendant Scott DeCry, he affirmed the Orange County State's County.
That's right.
Attorney Scott. Our next panelist is Ms. Sammy Martinez. She's an indigenous Chicana activist, organizer, and mother of 4. At the age of 12, Sammy began running away from home, where she soon joined a gang, and she found herself incarcerated for 5 years as a juvenile. She attended East Los Angeles College for dropout, and she became pregnant. Afterwards, Sammy served 2 years in Orange County Jail and prison. At the age of 33, Sammy turned her life around and dedicated her life and career to empowering youth and her community and supporting families for over 19 years. Sammy is passionate about immigration, mass incarceration, police brutality, and the lack of resources in the inner cities. She's been a youth counselor for Soledad Enrichment Academy, a community intervention worker for the City of Los Angeles Gang Reduction Development in the Rampart Division, and she is now a case manager for Volunteers of America, assisting formerly incarcerated young adults returning back to the community and the family. She also volunteers with Healing Hearts, in the Chino Institute for Women and Men, Tehachapi, and Chapawala. That is Sammy Martinez. He is the executive director of Roses in the Concrete. They use arts, education, music as a social change model to disrupt mass incarceration. He also introduces narrative therapy in the Santa Ana Unified School District. That is Jonathan Hernandez. Okay, right now we are going to turn it over to Pastor Steve Swoop, and where we are going to, there's Teresa. What? Did you say my name?
Yeah.
No. Today is Teresa's son Caesar's birthday. Caesar was, I'm going to say it the way it really is. Caesar was murdered by the Anaheim PD December 11, 2009. Today is his birthday, and we're going to say a prayer for those, for Caesar, and to all those killed by gun violence, be it police officers, mass shooting, or whatever, suicide. So we're going to have a prayer and a moment of silence.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you all for being here. We're really pleased to be a voice for progressive social thought and action in Orange County. This cause is no less important than others, and no more a part of who we are. Contemporary poet and hymn writer Carolyn Winfrey Gillette wrote, "If we just talk of thoughts and prayers, and don't live out a faith that dares, and don't take on the ways of death, our thoughts and prayers are fleeting breath. God, may our prayers and dreams and songs lead to a faith that takes on wrongs, that works for peace and justice too. Then will our prayers bring joy to you." Please pray with me. Oh God, who is peace, God who is love, God who is compassion, we unfold the arms of our hearts around this grieving mother and all those in this room and throughout our community and region who have been touched by gun violence. Help our thoughts and prayers become more than just thoughts and prayers, but action. Lead us with hope so that we may continue strong and confident. Give us light to see, strength to go on, and hope to believe that there can be and will be an end to all that takes our loved ones away from us. Join me in a moment of silence for those who have lost their lives and for those who suffer because of it. Thank you.
Okay. So the panelists know there is paper and pen in case you want to take notes. And stats on Orange County's arrest records. Okay. Now, the first question will go to all panelists. And just keep in mind, even if I'm not addressing a question to you, if you want to answer anyway, just signal, and that's not a problem. Okay, the first question is, Orange County is a microcosm of what's going on in the U.S. criminal justice system. Racial disparity has run rampant. People of color are given longer, harsher sentences, higher bail amounts, and are offered a parole a lot less than white offenders. Why or why not do you believe this is happening, and what do you think we need to do to change this disturbing trend? I will start closest to me. Racial disparity runs rampant. People of color are given longer sentences, higher bail amounts, and are offered parole less than their white counterparts. Why do you think this is happening?
Due to lesser, they don't have the financial means. They don't have financial means for bail, and without bail, they can't get out. They can't work. They can't see families, and with that, they stay longer in jail. So when it's time for the court, they're just push, and they have a public defender who really is not interested because of the fact that he was paid a certain amount. And it does come down to money. It's on money, color, and I always refer back to, really, our cities of brown and black people. It goes back to education, it goes back to ancestral. Afro-Americans were brought there as slaves. We as a people who had, our tribes were genocide. Tried to remove us. It all plays a part for ancestral trauma. And people really play on that. It's just they do it a little bit different. Makes it a little bit nicer.
Well, as a public defender, and I take issue with it because my experience, and we've got three on the panel, is that most of the people who are public defenders and everyone's going to have their own experience, and you've had some amazing experiences, so I'm sure you see it from a different perspective than we do. I think in Orange County, in Orange County, we have an office that's, I think, filled and recruits really talented people who care about the indigent. So for me, that's not the biggest issue in terms of disparity, and I think pound for pound, if you get a public defender in Orange County, we're doing much better than having private counsel. There may be some private counsel that are good, but we're oftentimes much better. I think most of the times we're much better. So I'm standing up for the public defender's office, not just to stand up, but that's my experience in 27 years. People are trying to get into our office. They're good lawyers. They care deeply about the work. But I think, it's the thing you said, it comes down to money. It's all money ultimately. The reason that, whether it's race or it's just poverty, the voices that speak the loudest are the people with the most money. We see this all the time. There's a story in the Voice of OC today about an article regarding a motion we wrote about a company called Global Telebank, who makes $500,000 to $1 billion a year on poor people. And they get some pretty incredible stuff, I think, across this country. I hope you'll read the article and read the attached motion and see what they did to take advantage of people, knowing that recorded conversations with inmates was taking place, conversations with their counsel, probably throughout this nation for the past 5 or 6 years, did nothing. So it's always going to be interesting to see what accountability will look like when we're in courtrooms. All of us, it's all accountability all the time. We want to help people accountable, but the rich don't get held accountable the same way. And they often don't have the same fears that poor people do. So that's it. I don't want to dominate them like that. It's such a layered question, right? There's so many issues where people get left behind, and we just have to do what you're talking about. We got to work harder. We got to push, with greater strength, and we got to keep building defenders who care deeply about people. We got to make that a priority in this nation, like we make good teaching a priority. Best indigent defense, the best day in and day out work in those courtrooms, and being loud about it, and they're not being treated well.
Thank you. For me, I just think there needs to be a truth and reconciliation in our country. I think that our history of
Could you speak about
there's a lack of integrity at every level. So for me personally, I'm going to talk about nationally and then just Personally, I was a victim of molestation, and if people were gonna try and talk to me about molestation and candy coat it, I wasn't gonna have anything to do with it, and I was gonna be mad as hell. So I think a lot of people in our country are mad as hell because there hasn't been truth, because we haven't discussed the foundation of our economic security in this country. And so until we really have that truthful reconciliation, we're not gonna go very far, I don't believe. I sit across the table from people of color, usually black and brown boys. I don't sit across, I might meet a boy once every 4 years. I work in Los Padrinos, Long Beach, and East Lake in Los Angeles. I was a public defender in Los Angeles, in Norwalk, Torrance. I worked in the public defender's office in San Diego. And although you might want to do a good job in San Diego, if you are removed from the courthouse and you are over in another building and they video you in, and sometimes you're muted out, but yet I'm a judicial officer and I'm sitting here with the prosecution, there's going to be a relationship that is cultivated there that the public defender is not going to have an opportunity to participate in. So there's so many policies and so many little choices that are made and decisions for monetary. It's cheaper not to transport you into the courtroom. There's all these little decisions that are made that are extremely damaging, that will strip people. And I know that you had positive things to say about public defenders. I remember being a public defender, my mom saying you do God's work, but all other family members saying, oh, you were the dark cat. And you were, when I was a prosecutor, you were the light cat. So there's this mindset and this implicit bias that it's like the air we breathe. We've all been indoctrinated. I know, so I could go on, I'm gonna stop. Thank you.
I would just second what Scott said with respect to public defenders. I would second what Scott said with respect to public defenders. You have the public defenders and public defenders for the same is true with respect to power attorneys. But I would be willing to put our office up against any private when it comes to representing entities. And as far as why just disparity, I think we really want to put the nail on the head with respect to money, with respect to poverty, with respect to poor, indigent people getting arrested, getting charged, and unfortunately not getting bail. And okay,
Can you speak out this way?
Yes, not getting bail, or being able to bail out, and because of that, you have this domino effect, as far as, losing their jobs, losing their homes, losing their families, and so on and so forth. So, but I think it basically boils down to money.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the federal bail system because it's different from the state bail system. So in the federal courts, there are no bail bondsmen. So what happens is there's unsecured bond, meaning that a family member can sign a promise and act as a surety. So if the defendant is not going to court or does not go to court, then at that point, the family member who promised to pay a certain amount that's established by the court would then have to pay the court. So there's unsecured bond, where it just takes a signature, a promise. And then there's secured bond, where there's security of the property. And so you see the disparity in people with money and people without money, as you might well figure out. Where you have this one case where I personally witnessed, the judge, in my opinion, could have ordered unsecured bond. Family members were present in the court. Multiple family members were willing to sign as surety. And the judge wanted a secured bond. And the defendant's mother stood up in court and said, but we don't own property. And so you see those people who have property who can easily then say, look, this is the amount that you can secure with the court, versus the people who maybe working 2 or 3 jobs, or don't have the education and are making ends meet, they don't have property. And the judge wants bail to be, the bond to be secured by property. And so you could see how, you may have 2 defendants of, who allegedly committed the same crime, and have just as much family support, but because of lack of funds, lack of property, and everyone knows how expensive it is to buy property in Southern California and to be a property owner, then the person without the money, right, the property then loses out. So I see that in the federal system, and I think that money is a big deal. And I was also a private attorney in Orange County, and represented a lot of people who had money, and who were willing to pay a private attorney to represent their children mostly. I represent a lot of juveniles whose parents were willing to pay. And the thing about that is that when you have money in Orange County, you also have opportunity. And so you have children who are raised with opportunity, and therefore they're going to great schools, they're getting opportunity. They have the opportunity to be involved in sports or involved in extracurricular. All of those things matter when you're arguing before the judge and saying, hey, look, this is a good kid, or actually in juvenile. It's just, you're arguing those things, but you have to realize that those are opportunities that children with money who are privileged get, right? So. Thank you.
I also want to echo what Scott and Darren have said about public defenders in Orange County. Having good public defenders makes, to me, a DA a better attorney as well. It's a checks and balance within our legal system. And having done this for 22 years, I would agree, pound for pound, the public defender's office as a whole is probably one of the best defense law firms here in Orange County. And I have a great professional working relationship with most of the public defenders I've had trials with, cases with, and I'm a strong believer, way back when I was given the same sort of, oh, you wear the white cap, oh, they wear the dark cap. I think what makes me a better deputy district attorney is having a solid professional adversary. If I have someone who doesn't care about their client on the other side, that doesn't keep me in check and make me perform to the best of my ability in an ethical and professional fashion. So I also have a high regard for the public defender's office. As far as the bail, in Orange County, we have something known as the Uniform Bail Schedule. And it should be a colorblind process. It should be based on, judges have this schedule, you look at the charge, and there's a scheduled bail amount. Now, I do agree, there's obviously socioeconomic factors at play. I mean, obviously, people with money will make bail. I mean, that's just a fact of our society that's been going on forever. But I'm sure we'll get to it. There's efforts in the mix to reform bail and the bail process, but ideally, it should be a completely colorblind process. It should be based on not who the individual is, but really what they're charged with, and it shouldn't matter what that person's background is when it comes to bail.
All right, can we hear me okay? Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm going to be very direct in response to this question. So I'm going to give you a focused answer, and it's going to be focused to this. Why or why not do you believe this is happening? What do you think we need to do to change this disturbing trend? I've not seen that happen here on this panel, so I'll start. You said this, and I'm going to piggyback that. You said because of what you went through, you'd be very offended if somebody danced around that issue, right? Well, let's not dance around this issue. This is a very political issue, right? We're in Orange County, historically a red county.
Yes.
And inequality and disparity has been weaponized in Orange County. And historically, us being, a Republican, conservative county, look at our district attorney that held office for, a number of years. This red county has prioritized, I'm going to piggyback off of what you said, we need to start prioritizing these things. We prioritize incarceration, and it's been prioritized in cities that need resources, that need to be re-examined so that we can insert a little bit more hope in services to families that really need it. But we've not done that. Santa Ana, for instance, that's my city, has prioritized incarceration. Anaheim keeps police officers on payroll that are murderers. And so we have to be honest about this. And when we're talking about economics, historically speaking, in Orange County, economics and status can dictate policing. And policing, as a result, leads to sentencing. And the priority in Orange County, we've adopted this mentality where our county, our district attorney, our public defenders, we believe we can arrest our way out of these problems. And it's backwards. It's why we're here on this panel today. So I hope that we can be very direct in our answers today, because these people deserve the truth. There's families in this room that have been impacted by violence, rape, molestation, inequality. There's people that take plea deals at the hands of public defenders that are deported because of that today. So let us share our truth on this panel today. That's my answer.
What is your vision of true justice in the criminal justice system? What do you see as challenges to achieving it? We can start anywhere you like.
And I'm sorry, I just have to say, I thought it was very clear that I said racism was the root. I'm sorry, but I felt by your response, because I want to be helpful, I felt like it wasn't helpful.
That was phenomenal.
Okay. Could you repeat the question?
What is your vision of true justice in the criminal justice system, in a criminal case, excuse me? What do you see as challenges to achieving it? Anybody?
Please use the.
So I think, number one, when we're looking at the criminal justice system, we have to stop pretending as if we don't see color. Color is helped the criminal justice system thrive. There is no secret that black and brown kids are funneling the prison system. And it's the reason why it has been privatized. The criminal justice system is not designed to protect us. And historically it shows that it's not designed to also protect victims. It's why in Santa Ana reporting is so low. Is because you might call because of a domestic violence matter and have your child deported. And this is a reality that families are facing in my city. So I'm sharing this from experience. But we have to have a system that is designed for the people to truly protect our residents and our people in our community. And as long as we exclude people that have been impacted by the criminal justice system, as long as we exclude people that have had felonies from having a say in what that looks like, and we keep it to the most pristine and perfect people that they get to sit on our parole board or be a district attorney, we will never have true justice. And I think that in order for us to do that, we have to be honest about what we're dealing with. And we're dealing with a system that is targeting black and brown people. And that's my answer.
My specialty right now is dealing with hate crimes. And my victims typically are people of color. I go after these people because the ones who perpetrate these hate crimes really thrive on the vulnerable sectors of our community. And I would agree, there are people, hate crimes historically are an underreported crime. And the fact of the matter is, the people that they target as victims are people who are minorities, people who may not be here legally and have a fear of law enforcement. And my role in my unit is to get those crimes reported, to actively and aggressively prosecute these individuals who perpetrate this feeling of fear within these minority and migrant type of communities. So I would agree that, my vision of, true justice in a criminal case is really to combat hate. I mean, and hate can take many forms, and we see that day in and day out that certain groups are targeted because of their color, because of their sexual preference. And my goal is, hey, those people have a voice as well, and try to make them feel comfortable with our criminal justice system to come forward, report those crimes, assign a victim advocate to them, and aggressively go after the people who perpetrate these feelings of hate.
True justice in the criminal justice system. I think there's a lot of fear from all angles. So I was a public defender in Orange County for 7 years. So I'll start with my clients. There's tremendous fear. My clients who don't maybe understand the criminal justice system, who are incarcerated, who feel that they have no control over what's happening to them and don't have a say, who are shuttled in and out of a holding cell and then have to go to an overcrowded jail and remain there, who feel like they weren't given a fair shot at making bail. You have fear with the prosecutor, who may fear that they will get reprimanded by their supervisor, who may fear that, you know, if they don't have a certain amount of convictions or a certain amount of wins, that it could affect their ability to get promoted. You have fear with maybe a public defender. You know, you're carrying a really large caseload, and as a former public defender of Orange County, I do think that the Orange County Public Defender's Office is great, and we have some awesome attorneys in the office, but at the same time, public defenders have large caseloads, right? You have a judge who, in Orange County, we are yet to have progressive judges, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. We are very limited in the number of minority judges that we have. For a long time, before Governor Brown, in order to be a judge in Orange County, you had to be a prosecutor. You had to have been a prosecutor. You wouldn't even think about putting your name in and apply to be a judge, because as a defense attorney, you would never. And even now, as a defense attorney, I don't think you could run to be a judge in Orange County, because the general public won't want to vote you in as a judge. And judges also, every 6 years, are up for re-election. So they're concerned and they have fear. The last thing they want is a client that or a defendant that came before them, where they release them, you know, on bail or on his own recognizance, going and committing another crime, and then all of a sudden their name is in the paper as the judge who released this defendant, or sentenced to a light sentence, right? So there's a lot of fear in the criminal justice system, I think it's not simple. I mean, we've got a lot of challenges, and it's societal issues and problems that stem. Not only, you know, it's not isolated just within the criminal system, but we deal with so many problems that stem from society, from poverty, from the racial disparity, from lack of education and opportunity, from lack of jobs and employment, from homelessness. And so all of that then converges into the criminal justice system. And so I think our county as a whole, we need to start thinking about how are we going to help our people who live in this county. And as such, what we need to do is we need to vote. Because we are only bound by the laws. We can't change the law. We can argue, the judges are bound by the law. They can't sentence outside the structures of the law. So what we need to do is we need to change the laws if that's what we don't like. And we need to get more representation out there. And I think that's where it starts too. So it's a global resolution, not just isolated to the criminal justice system.
So I really liked what you said about colorblindness. So I think that's kind of the narrative. So I'm 49, and I kind of grew up hearing colorblind. Yet when I was a young person, I was born in San Bernardino. I got jumped, I was like in kindergarten, dirty Mexican. I go to San Clemente 2 years ago, above the bathrooms, it says whites only. Just J. Sarah, one of the J. Sarah students, their head leader had to send out a letter because some of the students were at a party having the swastika. So I go back to the fact that we are not being honest about how race is impacting us, and there's so much implicit bias. So kids are in school, but yet we don't have conversations about, you know, what type of implicit bias are you experiencing? What are you totally unaware of? I myself, I went to a Constitutional Rights Foundation where the judge was asked, how do you deal with implicit bias? And he honestly, I almost fell out of my chair, said, well, I don't have implicit bias. We take a training. I thought, wow, give me that pill, whatever that is. But that's what our kids are hearing. So then they think something's wrong with them, and they're like, well, I have feelings that aren't good about you. I have feelings that aren't good about you. It's like, I also think that gender stereotypes hurt us all. So we masculinize, we militarize our police. And my father was a sergeant in the Air Force. So I'm not for somebody who doesn't understand the good work of people. There are many people who are on the police force who want to do the right thing. But we burden them with all these other things, and we don't give them ways to stress. Even public defenders, I routinely had a migraine coming out of the Oakland courthouse. Routinely. And it was pretty much like, here's the 40 cases in arraignment on this day, and deal with it. And you know, instead, if you can easily you will be replaced. But everybody knew, and everybody had student loans. So there's so many pressures that everyone's functioning under. But going into law school, you are indoctrinated with this colorblind. So if you start trying to ask the teacher, hey, I'm kind of unclear about these issues, I'm having these concerns, you start feeling really uncomfortable. People look at you. And as a matter of fact, when I was president of the Thurgood Marshall Bar, when I came and started talking about, so we're going to have programs about structural racism, right? We're going to start having these people look to me, Kimberly, nobody wants you to call them a racist. I had no idea. Like, I get confused because you think you're trying to be honest and you're not trying to attack people, but you're trying to have these kind of discussions. So for me, if I want to talk about how I'm going to change the criminal justice system, I would first say, why aren't my youth who have IEPs, why aren't their IEPs being implemented? Why are they just not showing up to school? Because the teachers can't deal with everything. So the kids stop coming to class, and mom and dad have to work, and then they are unsupervised, and then they meet up with law enforcement. And law enforcement doesn't know that this person has a developmental disability. They're not trained in every aspect of mental health. You know, so we put these unrealistic, we don't support their services is a real issue. And so a lot of it would be, for me, prevention. We would actually realize, and I was the beneficiary of free lunches and free breakfast, thank you so much. If we would start busing our children who don't have transportation, if we start feeding our children that are going to school starved, that might actually show, okay? So there's a lot of prevention we do and we prioritize, but what happens is people, and I'm not dissing on the teachers, bless their hearts, they have a lot on their plate. I have 3 children, it's hard to get information to them. How do they do it with a full classroom, with people at different levels? So it's really, so I think prevention and not talking about color, talking about race, and not being afraid, because people then kind of go, you're just combative. You want to talk, why you keep bringing up the past? Until we can fully vet those issues and have just a real discussion, I think it's going to be very challenging.
Just super quick, I think these issues, there's so many that we have coming, so I just would say this. And I think all of these discussions are super important. The contribution that people, or some of us, can make up here is thinking global and acting local. As a public defender, I got to go to work every day, super committed to my clients, work really hard, be passionate in the courtroom, give great service, and model that for my fellow lawyers. That's what I have to do. The rest of it, with all due respect, it's all really important. And everything, all these issues are talking about are important. But when you come to the question of what's your vision, I'll just give you my contribution, what I just said. You've got to work really hard, you've got to be really committed, and all of these other issues matter, and you're going to hear this a lot from me, but I'm going to keep my head down. I'm going to work. It's the only way you really have this good stuff happen once in a while is if you work really hard and you care about indigent work every day. Talk is great, but we got to do it. And I've been there for 27 years, and so I've always said to this, when someone jumps up and says, I've had this with public defender, of course you have. Everyone's had a public defender who wasn't good, everyone's had a private lawyer. I don't care about any of that. All I want to do is make the lawyers around me better right now. I just don't have time to kind of live. It's always going to be that way. So there's going to be good ones and bad ones. My job is to make the ones that are there better, recruit better, and do really good work in the courtroom so that kid gets a second chance that he wouldn't have, because I was passionate and I cared and I gave the greatest closing argument ever. And that's and I'm telling you, there's people like several of us up here. This is our life. We live for this. We're glorious that we chose this work. So for anyone that doesn't think that, we know we feel like chosen people to get to work for work when we care deeply about it. So yeah, there's going to be a bad public defender and a bad somebody here and there. I just want it to get better, and you just do it client by client.
Okay. While plea deal, before I forget, Eric will have some index cards for the audience, and I know that some of you at the end just want to ask questions, so he's going to pass around those index cards so you can take your notes and ask questions so you don't forget your question. So this is coming around and passing, just let you know that's why. Okay, while plea deals are good in some cases, plea deals have become the norm in the criminal justice system, with an overwhelming majority of cases not going to trial. Often people are led to plead to their own detriment, including people who plead without being advised of the immigration consequences, and people who DAs increase or threaten to increase the number or severity of the charges to secure a more favorable plea disposition. What is your opinion on the effects and implications of a pervasive plea deal used in today's society? I'm going to start with the district attorney.
Plea deals, I think the statistics are about 90% of felonies result in some sort of plea deal. And we got to understand that with plea deals, in that definition, I'm also looking at not only plea deals with the district attorney, but also there's plea deals made with the judge. And I would say in today's society, there are probably more plea deals entered with a judge than really the DA's involvement. You know, I think most people would agree that the judge hears both sides, and often we have in each of the courthouses, and in fact in Central Court, there are judges whose only duty is to issue plea deals, to go in and make a plea deal prior to it be setting for trial. So to me, I think plea deals are an important part of the process. Now, as far as immigration consequences, case law is pretty strict that if someone's not advised of immigration consequences, there's ramifications for that. That person could have their plea withdrawn. That attorney who doesn't advise them of immigration consequences may be found to be IAC or ineffective as counsel. So I disagree in the sense of immigration consequences. I think the law has protections for individuals who are not advised of those consequences. And I think I see it all the time in the master calendar report that these individuals who are not advised by their attorneys on the record or by their lawyers can come back and have their pleas withdrawn if they're not advised of the immigration consequences.
With respect to pleas, you know, I only have one case now as a supervisor, which will not result in a plea. But just over the years, with respect to my experience, I can't speak to other attorneys and what they do with respect to having their client plead to particular offenses. I think each individual attorney has to do what they feel is best from the standpoint of advising their clients. As far as my approach, my philosophy, you know, it's one of, at the end of the day, the client, he or she, has the final say. And it's important for me to make sure that I have all of the information with respect to, obviously, what are the allegations, what are they being charged with, What's the evidence against them? What's the likelihood of them being able to prove this if we go to trial? Finding out what my client's side of the story is, and doing whatever investigation needs to be done, consulting with experts, things of that nature, going out to the crime scene, doing everything that I can, going back to what Scott said, doing everything that I can to represent my client and advise him or her as to what I think they should do as far as taking a deal. There have been a number of cases where I advise my client, this is the offer that's being made by the judge, or this is the offer that's being made by the DA. It's up to you. You have the final say so as to whether or not you're going to take it. But I don't think that it's reasonable. I think we should fight this. I think we should go to trial. But if we do go to trial, there's also the chance of you being found guilty. And if you're found guilty, this is what you could possibly get. So, I think it really boils down to the individual attorney and you doing what you feel is best, from the standpoint of advising your client. And not really concerning yourself with what someone else is doing. And so, that's sort of, my feelings when it comes to pleas.
So I think I like what you had to say, because I do think it's you put your heart and soul in this work. This is your labor of love. If you choose to accept that, if this is your mission, for me, when I meet with my clients, I teach them breathing exercise because they're gonna hold their mud for a long time. Because I handle serious cases where it's not gonna be a big deal. Here's your offer, like 2 life sentences. So you walk into that space, and it's sacred when you're dealing with that type of seriousness with some of these individuals, and you're their only lifeline moving forward. So I take that very seriously, and it can weigh on you. Absolutely, sleepless nights and things, but at the end of the day, there's also certain accountability on their end. Now, if you have me on Jones Street when I need to be over on Day Street, that's on you, my friend. Okay? So you gotta be straight with me. You give me bad information, the outcome's not gonna be good. But also there's a certain reality check. How's that gonna play out? We put this witness on, this witness is, here's what their evidence is, let's build our case. I don't just sit back and take, the balloon down with them. And I understand, I would have a public defender any day of the week, because I have been co-counsel on too many cases where people don't know what they're doing, but they think they're gonna hire someone, they've just given their last bit of money to someone thinking, okay, we care, so we're gonna give money, and they don't understand that the people who are there on a day-to-day basis, that are skilled, that have mentors, that have people who they can go to, knock on the office and say, I need guidance on this theory, I don't quite understand it. People go, here's my material, boom, take care of it. Here's the experts you appoint, here's what you would do. So there's a huge amount of resource and learning that goes on in the public defender's office, and a lot of people show up with that mentality. But you also have those people that aren't, everyone's functioning at their level of consciousness on any given day, and that's not always pretty. So I'm sorry, I kind of got lost on that question. Could you just tell me the last little part, because I want to wrap that up? Oh, the plea deals. So the plea deals, I've had like I said, the plea deals, you always communicate that, and you understand that people are under stress, and when they're under stress, their prefrontal cortex is not always engaged, and when you're dealing with juveniles like we do, you know that they don't even rent a car to you unless you're 26, okay? So you gotta take a lot of extra time with the young person, and maybe their family members, and maybe a couple of more conversations, and maybe some drawings. And so it really is case specific with the plea deals, but I have no problem. I did the opposite of what my office was telling me to do when I was, so 25 years ago when I started in LAP, we just had a prelim pool, and you just went out there, and you maybe had someone say, grab a couch. You didn't know. When I was in the DA's office, wow, they had a whole week training, we had a whole venue, so it was a different experience. But when I would go into cases, I would have to sit with my clients and explain to them all the ways we would navigate it. And so I think that it's a case-by-case decision, And there are definitely times, so I just had a client in February whose double homicide got dismissed. But a month before, he was ready to take whatever they were throwing in and screaming over me in court. I'll take this, and I'm having to say, have a seat, you got this, because you're wearing many hats. Regarding the immigration consequences, that upsets me, because I've been in court so many times where they're having hearings. We've known from day one, there isn't any lawyer who you're gonna work with that isn't gonna say, you can and will be deported. They're gonna tell you the worst case scenario, because they wanna sleep at night. They don't wanna give false hope or bad advice to their clients. So, at least that's been my experience. I know that I have always advised my clients, before it was ever required, we're talking about those issues.
Okay. Alternative sentences are being implemented in some jurisdictions, and with great success. Alternatives to incarceration create opportunities for people charged with a crime to get the treatment and support they need for rehabilitation, and allows people to face accountability while avoiding the collateral consequences of a conviction, which can harm future education, housing, and employment. What sorts of alternatives would you like to see in Orange County use more of, and would you like to see Orange County use alternative sentences more or less? Why or why not?
They hardly release people anymore.
For one, I think this is a great question. And after you read that, I actually found more clarity for question number 2. So I'm going to start with, you said, question number 2 is, what is your vision of true justice in a criminal case? What do you see as the challenges to achieving it? Question number 2 and number 4, I think, go hand in hand. I think that true justice starts with the juvenile justice system and juvenile sentencing, because prison does not happen without school.
That's right.
I think that we need to deinstitutionalize young people by creating community-based alternatives. I think that that's something that we should absolutely implement in Orange County. If that's your first time hearing that, some of the people in the room, there's programs that exist. There's restorative justice, there's boot camps, there's anger management, there's rehabilitation, community service, drug counseling, and these are these alternatives that we already have. But for some reason, I know Orange County is not a big fan of alternative diversion programs and sentencing. So these are things that I want to see implemented much more, and I hope that in the next coming years we start to see more of that.
So I worked in juvenile court in Orange County Public Defender's Office in 2005, and then when I was in private practice, I did a lot of appointed work in juvenile court, and I noticed a huge difference. There has been actually a big difference in the way juvenile judges handle juvenile cases now. In 2005, judges were sentencing these juveniles to juvenile hall. Like, I had regular clients coming in through the hallway in chains versus now. And a lot of it is because, we've changed laws and we have science about the development of juveniles, right? The delayed development of juveniles, especially in young boys. But I really do believe, at least before I went to the Federal Defender's Office, when I was working in juvenile court, that the judges in juvenile court really understand that the key is rehabilitation. Part of it may be that we have a lot of juvenile judges who used to be public defenders in Orange County, and they're on the bench now, but they are, I believe, trying to give alternatives to juveniles. Another thing I've noticed is that a lot of juveniles, if it's their first offense, they don't even come to juvenile court. So I do believe that there's a lot of diversion programs not involving the courts. So they do get maybe 1 or 2 chances before actually getting a summons to court. So I think that's a positive change in our system. When I was in private practice, I represented a lot of Korean Americans. I think we need a lot of mental health help in not only with our youth, but just with our general population. I think a lot of our mentally ill end up in the criminal system.
Yeah.
And we need to acknowledge the differences between something that's criminal and something that is, you know, as a result of mental illness. Although the two can overlap, I understand that, but specific to the Asian population with mental illness, and we have a lot of Asian Americans in Irvine and in Orange County, is that there's a stigma. And so a lot of Asian Americans don't get help. So you have immigrants from Korea, let's say, coming to the United States, and they have a child who needs to get mental health or services, or even evaluated at a young age, they don't do it. What ends up happening is that the child then doesn't get any kind of help until it's too late, and then they become a young adult, and then they go out in society and commit a crime. So what ends up happening is, as an advocate for that person, is that you have to tell the judge and also the district attorney, look, this person suffers from mental illness, but they don't then have any kind of paperwork. There's no paper trail on this young adult. And all you have is, you know, a parent's word, or, you know, and that's when, at that young age, at the young adult age is when you start getting them evaluated, getting the services that they need. So sometimes, I really believe that the mental illness is something that we really need to work on here, and it has to be separate from the criminal system.
I currently supervise lawyers in juvenile delinquency, and I started with the office in 1998, and the philosophy or mentality back in 1998 when it came to kids who had gotten in trouble with the law was more about punishment as opposed to rehabilitation. You know, juvenile hall has a bed capacity of 400 plus, and I'm not exactly sure what the numbers were, but you know, back in '98, I just recall going over to the hall and seeing my clients and seeing kids everywhere. Fast forward, you know, 2019, 21 years later, and it's night and day. Did a couple tours of juvenile hall in the last couple of months, and it's like a ghost town. You know, obviously we don't want to see any kids locked up, but it's completely different than it used to be, and the mindset or the philosophy is one of rehabilitation. We have what is oftentimes referred to as collaborative courts. There's a lot more collaboration with probation, with healthcare, with the judges, and even the DA's office to make sure that kids are not being locked up. So right now, I think, and again, this is still way too many, but I think you have a little bit over 100 and some kids who are in juvenile hall. You know, it's not perfect. Like I said, we don't want any kids locked up, but it's certainly a lot different than what I remember back in 1998. As far as these collaborative courts, you have drug court, you have teen court, you have what is referred to as race court, or CSEC, which is commercially, sexually exploited children, which you know, basically provides services to victims of prostitution or sex trafficking, exactly. So you have a number of these programs that provide services to kids, you know, with respect to getting them jobs, getting them, you know, helping them with respect to their education, whether it's a high school diploma, a GED, helping them to get into college, helping them with respect to housing. So it's a lot better than it used to be, but we still have a long way to go.
I think the system is designed to grind you into dust, so that you are just that they have this disability, and you go in there and you show it to the court, and you show it to the district attorney, and it's, hey, we're adding 4 more charges. And, you know, my one autistic client was, I just wanted to be insta-famous. And I keep telling them, because these other people were basically, they weren't sexually trafficking him, but they were using him to steal cell phones. And it's like I'm in this, you know, microcosm, like nobody's hearing me. It's like, okay, well, we filed it. And then the judge is like, set it for pretrial. So, you know, you've got to have people that are willing to step out of their comfort zone and take some chances and take some risks. There needs to be some leadership on the bench that calls the probation officer over and says, can we get some information here? And that's not a few cases, guys. That's like, like half my case. I handle the transfer hearing cases, and then these regional center cases that fall through the cracks. And they will lock people up for months until we can order probation to transport them. I'll do the transportation orders, get someone in the regional center, which if you call the regional center, you're going into the vacuum where nobody returns your phone call, and you have to wait for them to schedule an appointment. And this is after I've already gotten doctors to give me all the documentation that gives them all the information they need just to evaluate it. So that happens all the time, and it's very frustrating. And then in the transfer hearing cases, you know, I have there's so many things that don't make sense, that you're like, are we really doing this? We need somebody who's willing to come in here. We have one girl who was sitting for 28 days and waiting to be placed. And so I ordered her back on calendar, which I had to, you know, convince the clerk to do that. That's no easy feat. Okay, and then get probation looked at me and said, counsel, these things take time. And I have 3 kids, and I thought, you know what, if my kid was at a bus stop and waited 4 hours, I would be calling everybody and anybody, where's that bus driver? But yet you could put this girl in the hall, who we know has been molested, for 28 days, and she's not placed. And then again, when we brought her back 6 months later, she was doing well, finally got placed. No sexual abuse counseling. So I hear that in theory, there are programs, but I want my judges to go out to these programs and see if it's really happening. And I'm not saying the attorneys, they've got to work with their people. They've got to work with their clients and the families and get the information, and they've got to be in court advocating. But I want probation officers, I want judges, I want presiding judges, I want them out there to see if it's happening, because all the rooms they can't see into lockup where all the attorneys are standing trying to have a conversation with our clients with 9 other attorneys. Now, maybe that isn't how it is in Orange County, but that's how it is in LA. You're in Norwalk with 5 other attorneys trying to talk to your client who's in a state of crisis, and it's overwhelming. If there were glass walls and you could see all that nonsense, all the shackling, we wouldn't be allowing people to be treated, because today's defendant was yesterday's victim. Okay? And so this is not a public service. This is a public health crisis, and we're not creating a public safety situation. And so it's all, for me, it's all connected, because these defendants on the serious cases I'm having have had these developmental disabilities, have fell through the cracks. So I wouldn't be with them if someone else along the way had given them supervision.
Alternative to incarceration, I believe that
Can you speak louder?
Very, very much needed. They say they have some diversion programs, but they're not. I work with reentry, with young adults reentries. We're limited in what we can do. I'm a case manager. Anytime I want to go above and beyond, I get written up. I can't do it. And it hurts. It hurts, because these young adults have been incarcerated. Me, formerly incarcerated, non-active caregiver. We suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome. You know, it's alive and well. Have somebody raise their voice to me and you'll see how I react. I took it a long time. You know, I do other things to take care of myself, my own self-care, it's my own mental self-care. These young kids don't know that. Families don't know how to deal with it. So diversion, I have prevention. Prevention starts in the schools, and that means involving families. And if we can't get the family there, then we should have programs in mental health that can go out to those families and begin to show them how to communicate, how to you know, it takes both parties, it says, it takes a village to raise a child, you know. Mental health, as she said, is a big issue. A lot of kids are like I said, used not only in their families, but then even from the community as racism and classism and socialism, you know, what they have, what they don't have. Counseling programs, they're very important. As I mentioned about homelessness, they say there's money here in Orange County. I hear of all these apartments going to be built, but I look at the courtyard. I look at my clients coming in. You know, I don't like to call them clients, I call them young adults. You know, we treat them as a number. It's time to stop treating our kids and people as a number, because it's just a numbers game. It's not a human game. We need to make it a human game. When I talk about programs, I was born and raised in East Los Angeles, and when I got arrested, I was sent to a placement. It was a transitional day treatment placement. It allowed me to be in school all day, and I would go stay there from 6 o'clock in the morning. They would pick me up, drop me off at school, stay in school, go to counseling, I would do chores. Then I would have my mother come for family counseling, and that was court ordered. It helped. I communicate, but it takes, like I said, it takes two. My mom was an alcoholic, so I know the difficulties on that. But part of it was able to help me, because I had other people, I had law officers, I had probation officers that cared, you know. And sometimes, as they said, they're overworked, and so they just push you through the system. And we need programs. We need counseling. We need mental health, and we just don't have the money. They say we have the money, but I don't see it. I don't see it. I work in these programs, and they're just not there. But we need diversion programs. We really need them, because not every kid, our young people don't get even a first chance. When people say second chance, I'm like, no, wait, we need a first chance. Because when we're born black and brown, we don't have a chance. They don't give us a chance, especially when we're born in the state.
Next question. A lot of you have answered a lot of it, so I know you most of these attorneys, so I'm going to keep it a little bit shorter. Mental health issues have become more relevant in today's society. Do you advocate for more mental health services over incarceration and dealing with defendants suffering from mental health issues? And do you advocate for the expanded use of mental health courts and veterans courts as a version into incarceration while right now? And as a veteran, this is very important to me, because I know a lot of my fellow veterans have mental health issues and they end up incarcerated. There's too many veterans behind bars with PTSD issues that are self-medicated, and I'm a veteran advocate. So, this is important to me. We don't use it enough. And as a mental health court, my son was denied a mental health court, and he's documented. So, let's try to keep it a little bit short. Thank you.
I think, with respect to this question, I'll keep it very brief. I think that crime isn't as black and white as we think it is in urban communities. I think that when you are looking at urban communities, I'll speak for my city in itself. I'm from the city of Santa Ana, and we are the third most densely populated city in the U.S. behind Chicago and New York. Right? So we have 8 people living in a 2-bedroom house. And there's a documentary that PBS had put out called Unnatural Conditions. And this documentary went into depth about the conditions that youth, black and brown youth, are having to go through to get to the point of self-actualization. What does it take to get to graduation in a community like mine? It means having to go to more funerals than you do graduations. It means having to be denied access to food. It means you have to start stealing it. It means that on a bad day, maybe breaking into that car is the only shelter that you have, right? That is a mental health crisis. There's no evaluation period. Nobody, Tupac said it best, nobody ever did a crime they had to do, right? And so when I look at that, there's no need to debate that exposure to this at a young age is toxic to the brain and the body's development. And so there's a book by Dr. Bruce Perry called The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog. And in this book, it shows that children have experienced symptoms of PTSD at a 5 times higher rate than soldiers returning from the battlefield. As a matter of fact, it is so complex that the field of psychology and mental health, came together in the 1990s. That was the year where, psychology and neurology started to really become one. And it is so complex what we're dealing with in communities like mine that they've re-diagnosed this as chronic post-traumatic stress disorder. Because these children don't get to leave the battlefield. They relive it every day. So what we're dealing with is absolutely a mental health crisis, and we have to start treating it that way. And I think that we are doing the community a disservice when addressing crime and the criminal justice system by not having mental health agencies involved. And I think that that's something that we need to see more of, and it's something that I will continue to advocate for.
I mean, I also agree that mental health services should be available. If someone's dealing with mental health issues, that's different than someone who is feigning a mental health issue. One of the things that's just passed last year is we have a mental health diversion program now. And I've actually done 3 hearings through that system where almost any crime applies to this particular mental health diversion program, with the exception of homicide and sex offenses. But if doctors come in and they can say that substantial factor in a person's crime was a diagnosed mental illness, then the courts allow them to go through a diversion process. So I do think, compared with where we were even 5 years ago, the courts are starting to recognize mental health. As someone stated, we have a veterans court now. There's a partnership now, not only between defense attorneys, the DA's office, the judges, but also mental health professionals within the county. So I do strongly believe that we need more mental health services, but I also think that we've come a long way in making those a part of the criminal justice system within the last few years.
Yeah. Just over the years, so many of the clients that I've represented, it's been, apparent to me that there is some sort of mental health issue. And so just going back to, some of the things that Scott said with respect to just, doing the absolute best and working as hard as we can for our clients. When I would see that my client had some sort of mental health issue, I would always take steps, or at least I hope that I would always take steps to get as much information as I could to try to deal with that particular issue. So finding out, whether or not the person had any sort of prior diagnosis, had a doctor, had been on medication, getting information with respect to family members, whether it was mom or dad or husband or wife or something like that, so that I could take steps to try to get that person the help that he or she needed with respect to their mental health. As Paul indicated, we do have here in Orange County what is referred to as mental health diversion. This was something that was just passed last year, and at the time that it was passed, I was supervising attorneys in our central branch court, and one of the things that was frustrating for me and for the attorneys was the pushback that we were getting from the DA's office when we had clients who were clearly suffering from some sort of mental illness, and we were trying to get them into the mental health diversion program. So I'm not at Central Court now. I'm not exactly sure, how things are with respect to the DA's office being more receptive to mental health diversion. I hope that they are, but you know, it's something that I think, based on, you know, all of the parties involved, I think is real good for our clients, and we'll just see how things work with it going forward.
My father was a lifelong Air Force sergeant, and my brother was in Vietnam. He returned with schizophrenia. And so the first 8 days that he returned, he didn't speak to anyone, and no one told my mom what was going on. So she had to go out to the Air Force base and say, there's something wrong here. And so my whole life I've lived with someone who lived with us. My mother was his caregiver, and they would still send him mail that he couldn't open because he didn't know to open his mail, and they'd always be terminating services, so and benefits. So I'm excited to know that Orange County has a collaborative court, and I did go on the tour back when Judge Lindley was facilitating it, and one of the genius ideas that she implemented was that all the services had to be centrally located. So you could literally follow like a red line down. You know, if you're here to appear in court for this issue, and you have a license issue, or you have a VA issue or medication issue, you need to walk to the red line to that room and set an appointment. So it needs to be centralized. You need to understand that if you're dealing with people with a mental health issue or developmental disability, if you give the parent some 2-week out, that person might be gone. You don't know if they're taking their medication, you really don't know. So I think to have it centrally located is critical. I think to have all those resources available, and to realize that it's a challenge sometimes to get people to take their medication and to be stabilized. And then again, I think it's an education process for the district attorney and the public defender's office and private counsel. I think that the judges need to open up the courthouse and tell people, here's what post-traumatic developmental disorders look like in youth, and here's what post-traumatic stress disorder looks like in adults, and here's what we can do to work together rather than just assuming, because there's a certain amount of people's ego involved, right? When you handle more serious cases, you get a little jaded, and you're like, I'm not gonna get punked by some, you know, person who's trying to clown me and tell me they've got these issues. So you've got to be really willing to teach people what the symptomology is. And as you mentioned, you seeing people who have mental, you start to see a pattern in certain ways you engage. Even someone who, when someone's too compliant, when I'm talking to someone who's too agreeable, that's a red flag for me. Because it's like a one-hit wonder, right? You know, they know to just say, okay, wait a second, tell me what I just said. So you got to think of some clever ways, or I do this a lot. Could you read that for me? And then when they can't read it back to me, I'm aware. Or I ask them to, to share what they understood I just said. So just really having good education in the defender's office and in the district attorney's office. The leadership letting the younger DAs know they're not gaming you. There's certain protocol. That's my suggestion.
Orange County had something called the OCDA Innocence Review Panel. The OCDA and the Orange County Public Defenders are involved in the project. An inmate can fill out the form requesting DNA testing done in their cases. The county gets a grant for this project, I believe. However, the last time I checked, not a lot of inmates has had their DNA tested through this panel. Most have been turned down. According to OCDA's own report, which I believe has been updated since 2013, I just checked yesterday. A small number, a very small number, have been examined, and none of them been helped. Why do you think this is, and what can be done about this?
Can you provide the next question, because you've got 19
Yes.
left. So,
Okay.
and then we can talk about one subject matter, which is kind of what we're doing.
Okay, and previously, Orange County DA's office has denied wrongful convictions. Yeah, you're right, DNA. They've denied they've had any wrongful convictions in Orange County, which we found this not to be true. What can be done to limit or eliminate wrongful convictions in Orange County? And when there is wrongful convictions, what do you believe Orange County should do to correct the situation?
Okay, I'm ready to talk a little line. First of all, I want to say this before I start. It was brave of Paul to come. We have to give him some respect for coming in, because this is not a crowd that every prosecutor wants to walk into, especially the subject matter we're about to talk about. And we're going to disagree on some of these things, and we'll just talk it out here today. But these are kind of some of the fundamental issues of the
day. It's not so much, it's a DNA question or DNA testing. It's a fundamental way of looking at rightful and wrongful convictions and how you prosecute cases. And the problem here, as we've seen over years, is it's just not clear that at this moment in time, after all that's taken place in Orange County, that fundamentally prosecutors, and I'm not saying Paul, I'm saying as a group, as an entity, there's always going to be exceptions. I don't think that office has made it clear that they understand sufficiently how favorable evidence has to be turned over. We don't really want to limit the discussion to DNA, because then it becomes, on my case, what if there's no DNA? Is it all going to come down to whether you could be acquitted with DNA evidence? That's not right. There's going to be cases where that has nothing to do with the wrongful conviction. So certainly there should be more submitted. But the problem is, if we look at what's happened, I've written a lot about this over the last 7 years, including in the last years. Coming out of the informant scandal in 2000, still going on. Coming out of it, we looked at 2,500 cases to look at what happened with the deputies who carried out this illegality that violated inmates' rights. What did you do with those guys? Did you disclose evidence about their wrongfulness? Did any defendants ever get that? And we saw a percentage of 0. None of the law enforcement personnel that were involved in running this informant program that violated rights had disclosed the case subsequently. I always kind of put it akin to this. If one of your family members is on the witness stand and they've had a prior petty theft, the jury's going to hear about it. Now compare that to men in uniform or women in uniform that are violating inmates' rights. I mean, on the scale of what's terribly wrong, I mean, where do they stand? They're not in the same ballpark. Yet there were no disclosures, even though everybody knew these folks violated rights. They said they were going to turn over a new leaf. And in 2016 to 2018 until today, there's no disclosures. So we have the largest informant scandal, arguably, in the country, ever. We had 19 cases impacted by it. People sat on it for 30 years. Not one human being came forward and said, by the way, the people around me are doing bad stuff. We're moving people around, we're violating laws. Not one human being came forward and said, we've got a problem. It took crazy circumstances. Paul Wilson lost his wife in the decry case, is here today, and was so disturbed by what he saw, even though he lost a loved one and seven other friends. He turned around and said, I can't even take watching this anymore. Watching it in court. So, the real issue is, it's not a couple more tests here and there. It's fundamentally, what's it going to take to see that there's a change? If you follow this in the last week, incredibly disturbing news. I think it was last week, Mr. Spitzer said he was in possession of a letter that was written by Tony Rackauckus. And that letter said essentially, it was written to Don Barnes, written to Sheriff Hutchins, and Don Barnes, I guess. And it said basically, we're clearing everybody, these 10 people who allegedly got involved in the informant program as Sheriff's Department people. And we cleared them for a reason that absolutely makes no sense, but it looks like kind of a favor to the Sheriff's Department. And if you look at it, the question was, how did people respond to an email when the test should have been, did these people violate rights? So they answered a question that wasn't the real question, and they cleared everybody of what's called a Brady obligation, which means at that point, if that person comes up as a witness, you don't have to disclose anything on them. That is nonsensical, ridiculous, unfair. But the problem is, it's not just those 10 people that got cleared, it's how would you possibly do that as an agency? And if you're doing that there, where else are you doing it? And I would say, if you're sitting here, you should say everywhere. Everywhere. Because if you don't think about this stuff right, if you don't ever stand up to law enforcement, which was really what we learned, they will not stand up to law enforcement again and again with the Sheriff's Department and other agencies. And again, Paul will probably say differently, and they said there's always going to be counterexamples. But we have had, I know I'm going on, you probably won't hear from me much after this. This is my one moment. Yeah, I would just say, look, we have an immense problem. We have an immense problem. If all the programs in the world aren't going to change it, we need people to pay some prices. That's what it is. It's just fundamentally not what we've had We've had a California investigation where these people sneaked around and filed no charges. We waited for them for 3 years. They didn't have the decency. Attorney General's office didn't have the decency to even tell us they were clearing people. While we wait for a U.S. investigation. And I think good people involved, and we'll see what happens. But so far, talk about this. 30 years of terrible conduct, terrible concealment of evidence, and now one person lost a job, lost a paycheck, lost a meal. It's unbelievable. And we know it's happening, and we have no reason to believe it's changed. So what do? I kind of come back to that fundamental point. On our end, we are not perfect. We have plenty of flaws in our game as lawyers. We're trying to get better every day. We just go out, and we fight, and you folks fight, and we all fight, and we say we're not tolerating this. And then we just try to do it every day. But it's an enormous problem, and you gotta just fight it one by one.
It's a tough fight.
Scott Sanders blew it off by himself.
That's true. Lots of good people out there. Thank you. That's kind. You know, Scott said, you know, nobody has been held accountable, nobody has lost his job, but I'd say Tony Rackauckus lost his job. I mean, I really think the informant scandal, you know, part of the election process that we have in this country is if people are not satisfied with their leaders, they vote them out of office. And I really think, you know, that was something that Todd Spitzer campaigned upon, cleaning up whatever sort of informant scandal was going on, doing a full investigation. And I really think the person who was held accountable was the leader of our office, Tony Rackauckus.
That's not good enough.
Todd's promoted those guys.
That's not good enough.
Come on, how do you say he's changing if he's promoted?
Enough, audience, please.
You know, as far as changes, you know, looking at question number 7, dealing with wrongful convictions in Orange County, one of the things that has been instituted this year is they've started within our office a conviction and integrity unit. And in fact, if you look at the Board of Supervisors meeting this past Tuesday, they allocated budget money to establish a supervisor, paralegals, and attorneys within that unit. So
It's a farce.
well, one of the major changes is establishing this conviction and integrity unit. As far as the innocence review panel, I have been a part of that panel. I have had cases presented to me where we've looked at things. We've had public defenders on this panel. And if there's any sort of DNA to be tested, if there's any sort of science to be retested, those things are being approved. Now, oftentimes, we get requests from convicted individuals who say their complaint is, you know, my defense attorney or other issues with the legal system, really drawing apart from this innocence review panel. But I would say strides are being made, a conviction integrity unit is being established here in Orange County, and I really can't talk about the letter that Tony Rackauckus sent to the sheriff. That would be something you would want to post to him.
Okay, bear with me, I'm buying 4 of the next questions.
Number 7, right?
She's gonna have
Number 7?
you just want to answer number 7?
Yeah,
Okay.
Because we've spoken on a lot of the legal parts of number 7, which, you know, the attorneys did a great job. I just want to touch on the mental health portion of wrongful convictions as well, because I think it's important. Wrongful conviction is, you know, somebody can have been in there for 20 years and can be released, but the psychological prison that somebody stays in is also very real. And the health issues that stem from incarceration, whether it be for 1 year, 5 years, or 28 years, are irreversible without treatment, without counseling, without support, and reparations. I think that there should be intensive, you know, reentry programs that focus on case management, that have a very specific focus on these cases here. Because I know with Prop 57 passing, Orange County had, I believe it was about 231 youth that were trialed as adults. And I've had the pleasure of working with youth that were released on Prop 57, and they refer themselves as a Prop 57 child. I have a case right now, a kid that was serving a life sentence for a homicide that he did not commit. And it wasn't until his 6th year being incarcerated that they reviewed surveillance and it was like, oh, you're free to go. What his mind conditioned and forced himself to he indoctrinated this in himself that I gotta be the meanest person on the field. If I'm gonna be here for life. There's no way you can carry on and be happy on a daily basis from 16. And then a month before your 22nd birthday, they say, hey, by the way, you're innocent. You're going to be able to go home. This young man still does not know how to apply to get an identification card, a social security card. As a matter of fact, he's afraid to even attempt to work. This person's 22 years of age. What's sad is that damage has been done already. And these conversations, they're real, but the good thing is that he has people like ourselves, and there's programs like Sammy and I with the work that we do, but these conversations don't happen enough. So I hope that when we're looking at these questions, we also look at the mental health portion of what incarceration really does to somebody, because that didn't just affect him, but it also affected his younger sister and his mother.
Okay, I'm going to skip over some of the questions since there are audience members that do want to ask you questions. But 18. District attorneys must be committed to rigorously and independently investigate and prosecute law enforcement and other official misconduct. An independent public integrity unit tasked with investigate and prosecute alleged instances of public corruption, fraud, police shootings and other abuses of power can help avoid concerns about bias in cases involving police misconduct and further protection for all. Do you support the creation of such a unit in Orange County? Why or why not? Secondary, do you think prosecutors should release dash cam recordings and audio or video surveillance related to police-involved shootings, misconduct within 30 days of any incident? Why or why not?
Pass AB 392.
One of the units, the unit I'm a part of, the Special Prosecutions Unit, we look at public corruption, we look at police shootings, we look at use of force cases. Now, the second part of the question as far as dash cam recordings. To my understanding, those dash cam recordings are released once the investigation is completed. Now, within 30 days, I don't think that's happening. It's not until upon further investigation, and I think we've had a number of recent press conferences where the DA's office has gone into detail about the various police shootings, showing the videos. One of the ones that comes to mind was that off-duty LAPD officer in Anaheim where the kids were running across the lawn and it led to a discharge of his weapon. That led to an extensive press conference with every available video being shown to the public. There's been recent ones where officer-involved shootings have led to the death of an individual. Those videos were all released, as well as the report. Our office also releases the letters and investigation final analysis of the DA who reviewed those shootings. Those are all public records that are released once the investigation is completed. So I do believe that those recordings are released, but I believe that they should only be released once the investigation is completed, because you really want to get the independent witness recollections and interviews done without any sort of taint of this video being out there. And so there's reasons why those videos are not released to the public within the first 30 days before the investigation is completed.
With respect to whether or not I support the creation of...
Can you put the mic to your mouth?
With respect to whether or not I support the creation of, I guess, this type of panel, With respect to the release of the dash cams, I'm really not sure. I think it, so long as it's not going to impact from a negative standpoint, my case or my colleagues' cases or another defendant's case, then I wouldn't have a problem with it.
We have to have something else, because what we have isn't working. It's no one should, with all due respect, trust the district attorney's office in terms of its analysis of wrongdoing with police officers.
Absolutely not.
They have consistently, through their actions, just lost the opportunity to sit here and speak as if they were an honest voice and standing up to law enforcement. So if you're in this county and you've watched what happens, it's impossible. I mean, it's just not logical to sit here and say, behind closed doors, because it's almost all behind closed doors. You may get a report afterwards, but it's ultimately behind closed doors, and I would return to one thing. That's how evidence disclosure works too, for the most part. We don't know what they want to give us. We don't know what they're going to decide to give us. We have to trust them. The system in California, United States, is essentially a trust-based system. You have to trust your prosecutorial agencies. You've got to trust your law enforcement that they won't keep a document behind. That they'll tell you when an informant was moved illegally. And the history here says they haven't done it. Again and again for years and years. So how in the world can we move forward and think somehow, because Todd Spitzer is here, and with all due respect, he's done nothing, in my mind, to earn any sentence. He's saying, give me a chance, give me a chance. What he's done so far, one person speaking, has not warranted that type of blind trust to continue. He's had plenty of opportunities already. And I'll tell you one of them right there, that letter, which to me is so disturbing. He sat on that letter for months while I was in litigation about the particular issue of disclosure of evidence related to deputies like these. He sat there and he got budget money out of it. He got a whole bunch of funding for a unit that we now have to trust will operate in good faith. Why would we do that? So we're now into the angry spot. I just think we've got to be real. As an agency, there's always going to be exceptions. They have not earned the right to be trusted right now. They have not earned it, and I don't think Todd Spitzer, because he ran on a platform of the informant scandal, and then he came in and lost it in 1 second. Everybody stayed in positions of power that had them before. Everybody that he said was accountable when he ran around the county. He said, these are the people. He left them all in or promoted them. So I'm sitting here 6 months in going, yeah, we better get an integrity unit that's not run by the district attorney's office. And I'm not trusting you with DNA, and I'm not trusting you with evidence. So that's my overarching answer. It's not working, and it's not going to work unless we get a heck of a lot tougher here. And we keep standing up, and we insist on this, and you get your friends, and this group is like 1,000 times bigger, to be honest. I mean, so when we talk about responsibility, I gotta be a better public defender, I gotta work harder, you gotta get more people involved. You gotta make the voice louder here. It's just isn't big enough. Just want to be honest with you. I applaud all of you for coming out, but we need 10 times these numbers. Because they don't feel it. They're not worried about you right now.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to not go through the rest of the questions because we don't have time. We're going to turn it over to the audience now. So Frank, since you're here. Frank, I know you're pretty short. Pretty short.
That was just one question. So let me set it up for one question. This is me. Okay? We have good deputy public defenders here in Orange County. I know. I've seen them in action. Even when losing cases, they're good. Okay? We have pretty good law enforcement in Orange County too. Because if we didn't, I sure wouldn't be living here. And this is a nice place to live. And I'm not going to criticize you with Spitzer because you know more about him, but I'm gonna give the guy, a chance.
Question, Frank, please.
I'm hurt, I'm getting to it. Now it is. Okay, here are major problems right now. They're other than an intelligent but ignorant and uneducated public, both black and white. The two major problems we have are, number one, racially prejudiced juries here in Orange County. And number two, an even more serious problem, the governor of California, who refuses to deliver justice to those who need justice. And we've had 3 governors here in California who just flat out refuse to render justice, especially to innocent people. And I'm gonna ask you, do you agree with me or not agree with me? That's my question, but I'm gonna say this real quick. In the news, not too recently, President Donald Trump, after giving information of a much too harshly punished black woman, served his life in federal prison. In less than 72 hours, his community service and set her free. I tried, along with other people, for 8 years to get Governor Jerry Brown Jr. to free about a dozen wrongly convicted people. But we have massive, overwhelming evidence of their innocence.
Frank, I'm about to cut you off in 30 seconds.
Okay. And he refused to see us. And that right there is a major problem with the governor. Agree with me or not agree with me? That's my question. Any of you?
Frank, you're scaring me.
I'm gonna pass it over.
You can say he's a dirtbag. That's what I think Jerry Brown Jr. is.
Next question.
Attorney Kimberly, correct? I commend you on your comment about the IEPs, 504 groups that I'm an advocate for. I work with tons of kids in Orange County. So I thank you for noticing that. DA, question for you. No, I'm okay. Your priority right now, you said, is racial concerns. I have a question for you. I'm dealing with an incident. I went to school about racial concerns. When African American students here in Orange County recently was jumped, kicked to the ground by several students. We did all the policy procedures through the school district about complaint there. We need to call the sheriff department. Right now, there's probably things at your office. This is just a video. My concern is that when the sheriff came out to take a statement, we had video recording of the video, so I'm trying to understand right there. The school principals were there, they agreed that the complainant was indeed the victim, and that the perpetrator was the person along with his friends, which I'm just happy to know. So what I want to know is that when the sheriff came out when he said, most likely the Caucasian kid who jumped, the African American would not be charged, because even though he hit the African American woman, it seems like he was a reason to fight. So I'm concerned because from that point of making that statement, and doing everything that we need to do, there was already a racial bias being formed at that moment. I'm concerned about that. I'm really concerned, especially when I'm reading a daughter to the school law. And I'm teaching first, I was really working on before you did this. Never been in a system, but I see these kids in the system. So what are we going to do about that?
As a DA's office, we make decisions based upon the cases that law enforcement present to us. Now, you seem to be discussing more of an issue on the law enforcement end, and whatever inherent biases there may be. But, you know, if a case is presented to me, you know, for a hate crime, if the hate crime's there, I'm charging it, whether the perpetrator was an Aryan Brotherhood gang member against a black individual, or the victim is Hispanic. If the hate crime's there, the hate crime's there. But as a DA's office, I'm not out there investigating or directing the investigation of that hate crime. But, you know, I will assure you that hate crimes is one of the priorities of our current district attorney. And that's one of the reasons we go out, we do outreach, we get involved with the Anti-Defamation League, with CARE, with all sorts of minority-based groups. We also go out to law enforcement and try to train them to help them identify certain hate crimes that, as I stated earlier, it's an underreported crime. And we need to go out there more into the community to get them to trust law enforcement to make these reports. So, you know, exact specifics of the case you're talking about, but I would assure you that I would take action upon those reports and investigations.
I wish that, I don't know if you invited law enforcement here tonight.
I thought about it at the last minute, but I have, full.
Since we've been sitting here, I text Don Lawrence, and he asked me to take a picture and send him the flyer. He said he didn't know about it. I have a pretty good relationship with him. I'm the president of the National Council of Negro Women here in Orange County. And I'm also, I'm not an attorney, but I have a law degree. And I did an event a couple of months ago called Barrier Breakers, where we had a panel of African-American judges and lawyers here in Orange County, and talked to about 300 people, some of the folks here were there, about being an African-American attorney or judge here in Orange County. And I asked a question about implicit bias, and some of the ladies recorded, and I've had a similar experience being in the courthouse and being mistaken for the defendant, being mistaken for janitorial staff, simply because, even though they have an orange jumpsuit, they're in, clothes too. And I've had a similar experience. And so we haven't, I came here because I thought we were gonna talk about racial bias. And so my question to the panel, and I'd like for you to answer as possible, in terms of implicit bias, with respect to plea deals. We haven't said much about that, but we've talked a lot about poverty. But are we saying that poverty and race are the same thing, or can we be honest about when we see a black face sometimes, we see something different than we see a white face, and maybe we're more inclined to get them to plea. If law enforcement were here, we could talk about, if you see a black face hanging out, especially a young man, like my son who is a college graduate, but if you saw him hanging out, he might look menacing if you have that. Can we talk about that a little bit, especially some of you all that are public defenders in terms of plea deals and that? Again, I thought this was about race. That's why I came here instead of going to the Juneteenth celebration.
Well, obviously, it's not an issue for me, I'm black.
I know this.
But it's not an issue for me, right? But if you're talking about with respect to the DA or with respect to the judge, there's no question that over the 20 years that I've been practicing that I've seen it, or I've heard, little things here and there, if you will. Being in Orange County, I haven't represented a lot of African Americans, but I've represented my fair share, unfortunately. And one of the things when I think about this implicit bias that I'm reminded of is because in thinking about young black men that I've represented, I would venture to say most of them were from LA. And I think about, and I thought about it a number of times, going back in chambers, not being able to get an offer that, my client was inclined to accept, and going back in chambers and trying to get an offer from the judge to resolve the case, and hearing a DA, not every time, but consideration when you're making this offer. But, you know, me, as far as obviously, you know, going back to what Scott said, you know, I'm just trying to do everything that I can for my client to get the best deal that I can if we're trying to resolve the case as opposed to, you know, taking it to trial and fighting it. But, I mean, you definitely see it, and there's no question about it.
I'd like to answer that question as well. It's funny because when I enter a courtroom, I'm the Vietnamese interpreter. I'm always an interpreter. But yes, there's tons of implicit bias. I don't think we're ignoring that. I mean, it's everywhere. I have to say, after leaving Orange County Public Defender's Office and when I became a private attorney and I started going to LA courthouses, I was kind of in shock a little bit because it's so diverse in LA. I mean, even in Inglewood or Compton, you're going to get a judge sitting on the bench of every color. You're going to have an Asian judge, a black judge, a white judge, a Latino judge, and then your jury is so diverse. So when I do trials in Orange County, when I did trials in Orange County, and my client is brown or black, I make sure that during my voir dire, when I'm questioning my jurors, my prospective jurors, you know, I put it out there. You know, my client is black. Like, does anyone you know, like, you put it out there because you know everyone's thinking it,
Yeah.
right? And so you want it to kind of hit them a little bit. I like to do that. That's my style. But I think I can get away with it because I'm a small Asian woman. But also, I think the judges. We have to be really thoughtful about, as Orange County becomes more progressive, who are we putting on the bench? What is their background? What is their life experience? If they've been raised in a privileged, you know, suburban, you know, ultra-conservative, you know, community, they are not going to be able to understand or relate to the experiences, not only of the defendants, but of just the Orange County public in general. You know, when you look at jurors, prospective jurors who come in, you know, I was stationed at Harbor Court here in Newport Beach, and when just the diversity, it's gotten so much more diverse in Newport Beach, right? At Harbor Court off of Jamboree campus. You know, I was there when I was a public defender, I think in like 2007 or something, and I had an African-American defendant, and he wanted to go to trial. And before, on the day of trial, he took me aside and he said, I gotta have at least 2 African Americans on my jury. And I looked at him and I said, do you know where you're at? And I opened the doors, and the entire audience were retired white people.
Yep.
The entire audience. And he looked at me, and he got scared. And he said, I want that deal.
Yeah.
So it's a reality. It's a reality. There's implicit bias everywhere, you know. And I think that you're right. I've read tons of police reports where you look at the facts and you think, wait, it could be taken totally. This is self-defense, but the person who's trying to defend himself is painted in light of as the perpetrator, right? And so it's our job as the defender then, you know, so sometimes that person is the one who gets charged, or they both get charged. And so then as the defender, it's our job to collect the investigation and the evidence and the witnesses to prove that he was actually the victim, right? So it's there, it's out there, you know, and it's not just against brown and black people, but Asian Americans as well, definitely. So.
Hi, I just wanted to make a comment, and thank you for sharing all of that, but as a transplant, I'm originally from Northern California. First generation California born to Southern parents who escaped in the 50s for better opportunity. So this is very personal to me, being in Orange County. I'm not sure if people really understand the history of the housing referendums that existed here in Orange County. One of the reasons why you don't have a lot of people of color here is because they could not purchase homes here. And that is why they are in LA. So I'm not sure if everyone knows that. I just wanted to put that out. One of the things that I wanted to say is that on this panel, you all talked about prevention, but we don't have, and you all have called it, starting at prevention when they're children is of great importance, but there's no one on the panel we don't have any instructors on the panel, we don't have any counselors from school on the panel. And for me, especially with the mental health issues, it would be, I'm interested in knowing, is there some sort of mandatory mental health evaluation markers that are put in the school systems? I don't know if that exists or not. I happen to be a person that doesn't have children, so I don't know if that exists. Oh, we have someone that has an answer.
I'm going to answer your question. So a few things. You talked about the restrictive covenants, and so that's part of the history. I'm not from Orange County. I was born in San Bernardino, but I attended UC Irvine, and I felt when I was here in the 90s, I felt extreme racism. I mean, I could go anywhere and hear people say, and I'm not trying to be rude, but I talked to my sister here about that. They called it UC slant-eye. Okay, this was just normal. People would say this as though this was okay. My friend who is Vietnamese would say, Kimberly, they call us the yellow N-word. I mean, this was what was going on, and so even though maybe you just felt this kind of tension, at least I did when I was at UC Irvine, and I felt like Irvine was a terrifying place, and I had black and white fever whenever I left the campus, because I was afraid I was going to have a misstep. And so I had a lot of mentors of color, and so when I learned about implicit bias, I mean, I remember being a young public defender in the early 90s, and they would send us to training, and I thought, why am I going to training? I'm down with the cause, because I just didn't have the awareness. I didn't understand. I wasn't taught in school about these issues at all. I learned about racial awareness through listening to Public Enemy and Chuck D. So when I came to Orange County, I started reading the oral history reports that they had at the museum about this being a sundown town. Like, you worked here, but if 5 o'clock came, you got to get out of here real quick. And I read about Anaheim being the KKK members being on the Anaheim Council. So that was in the museum. So I thought people knew about this. I thought people knew about that the Mendez case wasn't the sweater boys who killed their parents in LA, but that was actually a Hispanic family that their children were sent to 44 segregated Latino schools. And that was only because there was an opportunity to work the farm because they had taken the Japanese and interned them and put them in concentration camps. So Justin Cruz, I want everyone just raise your hand, Justin Cruz. This is the dean at Chapman Law School for Diversity and Admissions. He and I are huge partners, along with Carolyn. We've been working together. We've been trying to get implicit bias in the law schools, at UC Irvine, at Trinity, at Whittier, at Western. Some of the schools are not going to be open, but we've been talking about this, but if we don't always get the request. There's a great documentary about the schools and how Prop 13 stripped all the funding, and it's called From First to Worst. It was out in 2004. So when you talk about first responders or mental health issues or counselors, you have schools that they'll have 200, 300, 500 kids to one counselor. That's the state of affairs here in this county. And so the Department of Education, they're doing what I guess they can with the resources, but they've had to turn to fundraising. So it's being neglected severely.
So you guys talked about like multiple sectors and people that are victimized by the system and alternative sentences. One of the biggest issues I know, especially in Santa Ana, is we have a lot of women of color that are transgender. And they can't get jobs, so the only way to physically support themselves, financially support themselves, is they go to sex work. And then they're back in jail, So there's just constantly, and there's nothing between that. What do you suggest as far as alternative sentences for people like that in a sector that is very vulnerable?
So when I was working in Inglewood in the 90s, we had a lot of cases that they had prostitution. It was first time 90 days, second time 120 days. And that was just third time 130 days. And then they started having a reimagined mindset of these people are not prostitutes, they're being used, or they're going through these different issues. So I think identity is a critical issue. I think when you have many levels, myself included, I don't have a clue. I mean, I would rely on like the 4th Street to educate me here in Orange County. I would call, I can't remember the gal who I always speak to, you know her name, short hair, gray. Laura. So I go to a lot of places where Laura presents, and she's educated me, so most recently about the Healthy Sex Act for youth. But I would basically, I don't see why we don't partner more and bring her leadership skills, her mentorship to our communities in the criminal justice, and create a diversion program where as soon as someone is identified as being a sex worker and being transgender or fluid, that they immediately go to a specific judge who has sensitivity training, who's educated, is aware, and then we have key people in that community who kind of help guide us on how to best set up programs to assist that person in whatever capacity. I don't know what the issues are. That would be my thought.
Last question, gentleman in the back.
Touchdown. First, I want to give thanks to you guys for showing up. I know it's difficult to sit and be fired at from people on the outside. Fortunately, I live here in Orange County, Illinois. Fortunately, I'm not a part of the criminal justice system. Thank God. Thank God I don't have a son, because he would be profiled. We talked about a lot of things, and I want to mention Scott. If you're running for office, I would vote for you. Your name is Scott, right? However, you mentioned that you put your head down and work really, really hard. Most of us do. So, I'm sure you probably do a great job. But guess what, guys? Everybody works hard. You're supposed to work hard. Mr. District Attorney, you mentioned that you're a part of the process for deciding who's going to be held accountable for crimes. So therefore, you're part of the process for why there's so many minorities that are being held accountable less than the white people. Can you explain that?
Well, I kind of have a disagreement with you in my specialization of hate crimes. My victims are the minorities. And if you look at my caseload, the vast majority of my caseload are whites who are perpetrating these hate crimes against minorities. You know, a vulnerable group that they prey on because, like I said before, they have a fear of law enforcement perhaps. They have immigration fears. So my specialization is just that. As far as, I think a lot of it is socioeconomic. I mean, outside of that, but I disagree with you in what I'm handling currently. Like I said before, if I see someone perpetrate a particular hate crime, I'm going to hold them accountable if they're white, Hispanic, Asian. I think hate crimes really serve as, it makes the whole community fear. I know somebody mentioned here, we had that incident in Newport Beach, you know, at one of the high schools, where a J. Sarah student and other students were playing some sort of beer pong with a swastika, you know, and that is a hateful symbol. And then you had Newport Harbor High School where somebody went and put up swastikas at this school. You know, hate crimes is something that just instills such a fear throughout the whole community. Whether you're Jewish, black, Hispanic, white, it kind of sends shivers down your spine. And that's my focus, is looking at a hate crime and going after these people who perpetrate hate.
I would just say this last thing. I'm going to bet that most people in this audience will not believe those people are in jail. Those kids, those high school boys that did those things, they're not in jail. But you let a little black boy smoke some marijuana over here by the school, he'll be in jail for 5 years. That's right. So, you know, you're probably doing a great job. But I bet those little boys are not in jail.
Let me just piggyback on that. I think you and I both know that you may be doing your job, but we know it gets to those judges. That's what the problem is. They do not we were at, North Court with, NAACP.
Yes.
Remember?
I'm familiar with that
We
case.
talked together, and we had that young lady, you wanna talk about that for a minute? What that judge did?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the cases where a young lady was targeted because she was black and she was waiting at a bus stop. I think that's the case you're referring to,
8 months pregnant.
where she was pregnant, and this was an individual who wanted to attack her and made death threats against her baby. And we had, and this is happening anywhere in the county, judges make plea bargain deals. And our district attorney, Todd Spitzer, as well as other individuals, showed up there with members of the NAACP, the victim, and at the end of the day, whatever sort of plea deal was thought of by the judge, he changed his opinion. And he gave a somewhat higher sentence. In our viewpoint, it wasn't high enough, but that's part of the process that's in place. If you have a vocal victim, if you have individuals in the community who care about these cases, one of the things I would encourage you to do is stand up for these victims. If you see another similar case like that, where you think this victim is underrepresented, it's strength in numbers,
But that case, in particular, that person had about 2 or 3 other strikes against him.
Correct.
And the judge offered him a 2-year sentence, which carried up to a 38-year sentence. Wow. And Todd and yourself was able to get that moved up to about 5 years. But we know that if you do 2.5 years, that's going to be the max.
Yep. I don't disagree with anything you're saying.
Can I say one more for this? Because I think this is important. I think we should address hate crimes and we should do it well. But the bottom line is most of the people in custody are people of color, whether it's black or Latino. So it's how we treat those people every day, which doesn't diminish at all the importance of hate crimes. But we can kind of get lost on the discussion of how do we treat a particular hate crime. It's still going to be about in Orange County 1% of the crime, 0.5% of the crime, 1/4 of 1%. When you're not treating people in custody fairly every day, you're not turning over their evidence every day, that's the problem. So, I mean, Todd Spitzer showing up in North Court, in some respects, does not sit well with me.
Well,
And with all due respect, and bullying a judge to reach a particular outcome. And you might like it because you go, that's the outcome I wanted. I don't think the DA is supposed to be showing up in force to get particular outcomes, unless he's doing it for some of the other guys too. That's nice, you get a lot of publicity on that, it looks good, you're now in favor of all the black community, but the bottom line is, I come back to this point, you're right, work hard every day, you guys are all working hard every day, do it right every day.
That's right.
Not you did a big show at North Court, you went over to West Court next, and you're going to do all these things, and that's what I think this is, to be honest.
my focus was on the sentences.
Yeah. I know, and I'm
The judge had the latitude of giving him a much greater sentence.
And I want to say this, you're right on point on what you're doing. And I get it. What I worry about in some of these things at the end of the day is it's like, that's what he wants to talk about. Mr. Spitzer wants to talk about high profile of those. But every day, we know for 30 years, people didn't turn over evidence, and those were all about Latino and black people. That's what it was, with people of color. What else is in our jails? Let's be real. We've got some other folks, but what? Yeah, and I'm not diminishing. But I've heard a lot about hate crime, and I know Paul's doing a good job and working hard. I have no doubt about that. I've known him for a long time. I'm not diminishing it, but we've got some real serious day in, day out issues that are going to make the difference about whether people are wrongfully incarcerated.
What are you suggesting that we do?
Well, look, let me tell you something. I said this point because it is responsibility. You know what you should do? We've had an incredible last 6 years here. And I say the same thing. We've got 60 people here. We should have 600.
That's right.
We have to mobilize even more.
That's right.
I'm not talking. Yeah, I'm not talking to you. I'm just saying. You know what will happen? You know when you'll have the press here? In droves. When they're out the door.
That's right.
And the truth is, if you look at experiences in LA, when people are organizing in these issues, it looks nothing like this.
That's right.
I mean, we've had the worst informant scandal in the country, and I know this wasn't what this was about, and you still aren't going to get people to stop here. And so we have to keep, as a group, moving the mentality of Orange County to about those things, and we just don't know. And that's why no one's paying the price, because no one's scared. No one's scared. Nobody in law enforcement is scared right now because not one prosecutor's held them accountable from any entity at this moment. They will. That will happen if you're out the door. When they start worrying about, they're not worried about you folks. They're like, big deal, I'll give this group up. That's like 75 people. So I don't know. We're just, we all got to do
The
that.
next time this is done, because again, we have 600 members. We're all left for decades. Had I known, I would have had my members here.
I'm not denigrating this. I'm thrilled to be a part of this and even have a chance to speak. I'm just saying, but I've been to other events. They gotta be bigger, they gotta be badder, there's gotta be more demand, and look, something's happening here. We know it's turned at least purple in this county, but it's gotta be more. For what's happened here, the lack of like outrage, and I talk about this all the time with people, they're like, do you know what's going on in your county? They have no idea. So anyways, that's my thought.
Dean Chemerinsky wrote a letter, and he had every major player sign off and try and get the Attorney General's office to wake up. And I just have to say one thing. I've heard from two people of color who talked about sentences, and I just want to say, be careful what you wish for. Because in addition to doing the transfer cases, I handle the Franklin cases. So after someone's been convicted and they're 23 or under, they come back. There are people regularly, 78 years, 52 years. How's that happen? Gun enhancement, gang enhancement. Yep. So, I mean, I know that accountability is important, but when you start, you gotta be, it's just something to think of, and I think what you're saying is so key, because when I go to trial and I have a judge that's already like, counsel, you didn't turn that over 30 days in advance, it's excluded. You get their attention, and then you win cases, and when you're winning cases on serious cases, they should be winning. Third strike cases, homicide cases, people start realizing, oh my Lord, they'll pay for that judge. But if enough judges start doing that, so he's entirely correct. I mean, it starts with these choices about turning over, or even just the really courageous prosecutor saying, here's my file. I have nothing to hide, open it up. You also represent the public. They don't just represent the people, we represent the people.
That's right. Okay, I know you have more questions, but they're trying to run us out of here. Okay. So, one question.
Where's the key? I don't know if you guys heard, last week that, Winter Park, 65-year-old was attacked, and, he was in it, I believe, anyways, my question to you, since you, say that you work with vicious attacks or, victim hate crime. Well, this gentleman attacked a 65-year-old in Winter Park, Hispanic at bus stop, and that was in Winter Park, and that was last Wednesday, a week today. And later on that day, he did another attack in Fullerton. He attacked my brother. The guy was white. He attacked. This is the second Hispanic. If that was a black or a Hispanic man that attacked, they were already killed him. Yeah. But he's in jail now. And if my brother attacked him, or the other Hispanic, that 65-year-old, they would have already killed him. On the spot. On the spot. So, I mean, he's lucky to be alive. That guy, the other gentleman is in a coma. So minor like that. And the guy attacked him from behind.
Knocked me out cold. I made this profession. And I really partially good job with me. But I was the same.
That day.
And he just went from the center on one part straight down and didn't even have a man on the front. And he was able to attack me and knock me out.
He was on Channel 7 News.
Unconscious. And I was saved because other people said, stop it, he's out cold, you're gonna kill him. And I was the second victim that day. And I'm here to, thank God, nothing, just a major concussion. The other man is still in the hospital, possibly gonna die.
And also, 3 years ago, MIT chokehold my nephew, his son.
My son. And
Daniel Wilson.
still, we're going to trial right now.
Murderers.
And it took a year and 4 months for them to release that video. They didn't, Tony Hawkins, he liked everybody. He had a conference and we didn't believe that my nephew had a heart attack and that he was, that the taser killed him. We waited a year and 4 months to see the actual truth of what they did to him. They choked him. And on the video, you can hear my nephew say, "Please stop, I can't breathe, please somebody help me." And they continue to choke him to death. So there are a lot of bad, dirty cops right now. I do support AB 392. That would have saved my nephew. The chokehold that he did, Daniel Gonzalez was giving Daniel Wolf instructions on how to do the chokehold. They're the trained supervisor sergeant, and it's gonna be 3 years. July 2nd is when they did that to my nephew. My nephew was 31 years old, my brother's son. So I fear for my life. I fear the cops. I have a son, he's in law school right now, and because of the name that he has, Emilio, I tell him, if you ever get pulled over, do what they say. If you're gonna reach to get your registration, ask them if you can get your registrations. Every single day, I fear that something's gonna happen to my kids because of what they did to my nephew. And I'm the one that's been advocating for my nephew. I go to the council meetings. I had an Anaheim police officer follow me home. Was he following me home because he was concerned my well-being, or was he sending me a message to keep my mouth shut? So, this is what my family is doing. And I live behind the gates. I'm in South County. Okay, I shared some information with the community. I belong to Codo and Dove Canyon. I shared some information on 392. Just to bring awareness of what this bill is. Guess what? I've lived there since '87. I no longer belong to that community page. And all I was doing was sharing because I've been going to Sacramento on this bill. And I work hard. I have my own business. I'm colored. I'm brown skin. And now, they look at me like I'm a criminal now because I share this AB 392 to bring awareness in my community. So racism is very alive right now. We have a big problem with the police. They think they're above the law. The badge is only allowing them to get away with murder. Look what they did to that gentleman's family in Costco. Can you get away with killing someone? They would have put you in jail right away.
May 26th, Anthony Sevens was murdered in the Mesa jail.
I know him. I know his uncle and and his mom, and so it's epidemic,
I about that right here on spelling. I got it in an email.
Yeah, and I also shared to come here because I was invited to ACLU to come here, and now this is my life now. It's like my mission to go to these meetings, and it's like I want my whole life back. It has changed me. I don't want to say that I hate the cops, but I hate what they're getting away with. It makes me very emotional. Thank God that I'm the strong one in the family, and I'm the one that's coming out here advocating for my nephew. But things have to change. Otherwise, people are going to take it in their own hands, and we're going to have a war against the cops.